Hello, this is Ross Marquand.
This is Cooper Andrews.
Hi, my name is Coleman Domingo.
Hey, I'm David Morrissey.
Hey there, I'm Greg Nicotero, and you are listening to
the CINIKRADIO podcast. Now, your hosts, Igrihe and Cinik.
And welcome to another edition of Cinik Radio Live. And we have a jam-packed show for you tonight. It's almost October. Do you know what that means? Well, it's time for everything to be pumpkin-flavored for a little while. Besides that, it's also a return of AMC's The Walking Dead. It's the biggest show on TV. So we break down the upcoming season. We also preview the mid-season premiere of Fear the Walking Dead for next week. And San Diego Comic-Con has come and gone, and it's given us a plethora of new movie trailers. We do a little bit of geek news, and we have a special guest, comedian Ryan Cunningham, joins us. All that and more, and it starts now. Hey, everybody. Ig, how are you, sir?
Oh, I'm doing well. The heat's coming back to the Midwest, so, we had a little cold snap for a while, and then I got a little cold, which is always a good time, getting sick during the summer. Happens every year. I don't know what it is, but it's awful, but I'm kind of getting over that now, so that's great. I'm really excited about the stuff we're talking about today. There's been a lot of news going on, some good, some bad. There's going to be a lot of good stuff to show on this week's show.
San Diego Comic-Con is like Geek Christmas. There's always so much information coming out of there. It just gives you material for days. Ryan George will be along eventually, and joining us this week is comedian Ryan Cunningham. Ryan, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Yeah, I'm pretty excited to be here too. Everything we're talking about, I would really consider myself a huge nerd, sort of in that respect. So I'm definitely excited to be here, and thanks for having me on.
Well, we appreciate you being here. So let's get right down to it. The Walking Dead Season 9 trailer starts with Rick sitting down and saying, "It's been a while since we've had one of these talks." And it has, in fact, been a while since we've talked The Walking Dead. October's right around the corner, so let's grab some walkers by the teeth. The biggest story coming out of Comic-Con was the departure of Andrew Lincoln's Rick Grimes. IG, did the news come as a surprise to you? Pre the leak. Did you think Rick would be around for a lot longer?
Initially, I really thought, this is Rick's tale. And, everything from the beginning has shown that, this is Rick's story. And I'm wondering if The Walking Dead is trying to pull a Game of Thrones on us and kind of just start to take away from that. But, doing that in your 9th season versus your first season just kind of seems like a stretch. I'm hoping what they're doing, because if they have to lose either Rick or Maggie.
Lauren Cohen.
Yeah, Lauren Cohen. If they have to lose Rick or Maggie, at this point, Rick is probably the safer bet to lose. His arc has been kind of dwindling down for some time, and his whole family is gone now. He's got, his daughter really, and that's not even really his daughter, is all that's left. So I guess it came as a surprise, but not a complete surprise. I hate to see him go, but it still intrigues me to see what direction they're going to go with. Where are they going to go with this with no Rick? Because I don't even believe Rick is gone in the comics, is he?
No, he's not. He's still kicking in, basically the main character of the story. And it makes you wonder how much of this was a Chandler Riggs decision, how much of this was a Lenny James decision, how much had to do with his family. But Ryan, 8 years is a long time to devote to one role. Would you be ready to do something else?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Honestly, I think that they have beat the horse to death as much as they can. I am a big Walking Dead fan, at least was, but, I think, they can only have Rick almost kill the bad guys so many times. I think that especially with Carl gone, and that was one thing that I was hoping would be different, is that I was the whole season I was rooting for Carl to kill Negan, and then he dies because he tripped over a tree branch. So it's I think that I think I'm ready to see something new. Hopefully they open up the storyline a little bit, And I'm definitely interested to see how the group might even turn on Rick.
Going from basically an unknown actor, pre-Walking Dead, IG, would it scare you a little bit to walk away from $600K per episode?
Yeah. I mean, how many people have tried that in the past? People like get these big roles, doing well, and then they're like, I have other options now. So they're up and they leave, and they make some awful, awful movie or start some awful new TV show that gets half of a season or canceled, or the movie bombs. And, you know, in Hollywood, when your thing bombs, you're kind of to blame, whether it's your fault or not. You're where the blame is placed. I mean, it's happened to a number of actors in the past where they make this decision and then they're not heard from after about a year after they leave. So, and $600K an episode, I mean, and that's the other part of The Walking Dead. They only do 16 episodes a year. Now, yeah, you're dedicating a lot of time, but it's not as much time as a traditional TV series either. You know, it does not seem like the smartest decision unless he really, really has some good things out there, you know. He had a few movies before The Walking Dead, and he was just fine in them, but he wasn't a standout actor. He wasn't like the upfront guy. So, you know, this was his first chance, and I think if he blows this when he leaves this show, he's going to be gone just as quickly as he came in.
Well, I think it all depends on whether you look at it as a job or you're doing it to be famous. Because if I'm going to take Ryan George and pluck him out of obscurity and give him a job and make him famous, Ryan, would you be able to walk away from $600,000 for a day or two worth of work?
I guess depends on how, you know, what other projects I'd have. I think as a creative person, you know, I'd like to think that while money is great, you know, at some point I'd have enough income that I wouldn't need to take jobs based on the money. And I think the type of money that these guys make, you know, at some level I'd say, you know, why am I doing this when maybe there's something more interesting or unique or new, you know, for me to do. So I think I'm torn. I think on one part you want to be part of, you know, it's an iconic character and something that's part of him, but on the other part, like it's got to be tedious, and at some point there's got to be something you can do. So, you know, I'd like to think personally I would go with, you know, what interests me creatively over, you know, whatever financial interests there are.
See, notoriety is such a hard thing. It's such a hard thing to come by. I mean, we see that with our podcast, Ryan. You see it with your podcast. Ryan Cunningham, you see it with your stand-up comedy. It's so hard to come by, to get people to notice you, to get people to want to follow you. And when you finally get there, when you're finally on the top of the mountain, and then you just turn around and kind of walk away from it before it's over, I don't understand that way of thinking. I don't know if I could personally do that, regardless of money or not money, being away from family or not. It's your job. And you do your job until the job is done. The show only had a couple more seasons left. I personally, and I'm not saying that Andy should have, but I personally would have stuck it out and ran it through. I get a little upset with this whole, you know, I love you guys. It just seems a little disingenuous to me because every year, if you're not aware, they do something called Atlanta Walker Stalker Con. They do a bunch of them, but the only one that he bothers to show up to is that one. It's a 3-day event. He shows up to 1 day of it. Now, you can't get Reedus out of any of these days. I mean, he goes to every single event. He's there. He meets every single person. If Norman Reedus said, I'm leaving the show, but I love you guys, I get it. Andrew Lincoln seems a little bit disinterested when it comes to the fans, and maybe he is private and disinterested when it comes to fame. Maybe it was a job. Maybe he made as much as he wants, and maybe he's going to ride off into the sunset. Either way, I personally wouldn't ever leave a gig that pays that much and has made me that famous. You go from paying to get into Comic-Con to being carried in there as almost an emperor. So we'll see where his career goes and whether I'm right or whether I'm wrong, but I certainly wouldn't have bailed on the deal. We left the storyline with a strain in the Rick and Daryl bromance. Do you think that it'll carry over, and do you think Daryl will have something to do with his death, IG?
Yeah, I think, you know, the whole clan of them over there, I mean, they hinted at it in the season finale where they kind of had them all sitting in the dark room talking about they're going to show him what's up. And I think, you know, there's going to be the comeuppance. You know, they've had enough of Rick kind of making his own decision and going his own direction because while everyone else has done it, the consequences haven't generally been as big. And, you know, even especially for Maggie, you know, she really wanted Negan dead for what he did to her betrothed, her love. You know, you just can't let those things go unpunished in this kind of thing. And they don't really have jail. there's no prisons that are running properly. So, you have to almost go death penalty. And instead, Rick decided to be all of a sudden moral and leave him alive. Rough up between Daryl and Rick and everything with Maggie and everybody back at Hilltop. I think that's going to be the beginning of the end for Rick. I think it's going to take most of the season to get there just because they're going to try and get every last ounce they can out of him. But, yeah, they're all going to be involved.
Well, the trailer picks up right where we left off. The spirit of cooperation. Rick proclaims, we will give the Saviors everything they need to get back on their feet. Ryan Cunningham, can you see the Saviors coexisting without Negan? And can they be brought into the fold with the rest of the communities?
Oh, I think they definitely can. I mean, I from watching the show, I think that, most of the time the Saviors, none of them even really wanted to associate with Negan. I mean, for the majority, you had the core group that were his, right-hand guys, that did most of the dirty work, but the majority of the community were just as against him as, Rick's crew. I think everybody, was looking for community and peace, and Negan sort of had that aspect to him. But, to the same point, now, I think one way that we might be leading is that Rick is almost seeming like he may become like almost a new Negan. I think the decision to keep Negan alive in itself is a very Negan decision to prove a point that, you don't have to die. We can torture you. We can, keep you prisoner for however long. So who knows? I think maybe Rick will even use the same scare tactics that Negan did. I mean, even in the last episode, we saw that. We saw him say, if you have a problem with this, I'm your problem solver. And, so I think maybe even that sort of mentality is what could ultimately lead to his demise at the end of the series.
Ryan, George, do you think it'll take the appearance of a bigger, badder, meaner foe to keep the peace?
That's what I'm kind of afraid of. I didn't read the comics, and I don't, but I do kind of have, know some spoilers about what's kind of coming. And I guess my fear is that, I guess this is a problem with any show that goes on long enough, is that you always kind of have to have a bigger, badder, big bad. And, to me, it's like what makes them compelling and what makes them interesting. And if they're just a bigger, meaner, tougher version of the previous person, then I'm not really, it might work narratively, but I'm not, I don't know how much I'll be in for it. So, I'd like to see them subvert expectations, and I'd like to see there be some kind of a struggle or villain or a way to create tension that isn't just another big bad. But I'm not sure that that's what it's going to be. But, maybe, and I don't know, with a story like this, it's either the zombies or you find a big bad. It's hard maybe to find another way, and it'd be kind of boring just watching them kind of recreate their society. So I get that you have to have that. But, I'd love to see them unify in a way that does subvert our expectations, but still kind of tells a compelling story.
Well, you could always get the undead and bring a bunch of dragons to a wall and have them knock it down and head south to Westeros, I guess. IG, we called for a little bit of peace and quiet and maybe focus on reconstruction, but rumors have it the Whispers are coming. They're knocking on the door. How many episodes before they kick it in?
Second episode, they'll be kicking in. You can't take a show like this that thrives on energy and go low energy for too long and keep the audience coming. You're going to have a little sneak of them doing something in the first episode, and they're going to be kicking down the door in the second. If they take too long, they're just going to start losing viewers. You have to kind of wrap up some of last season in the first episode, but you can't spend too long doing that. You really got to move to the next level. And while what Ryan says is right, the Whispers has the potential to go even longer than this Negan story with the Saviors did, just based purely on how they survive out in this new apocalyptic scenario. So I'm looking forward to it, and I'm hoping that they don't basically throw all their cards on the table right away, like small groups of Whisperers, small interactions, but enough to drive the drama. I just hope they don't, just go all in right away, because then it's going to be 1-2 seasons max, and they're trying to kill this product off as hard as they can, and I really wish they would stop.
I kind of do too. I like the story, and we're joking a little bit, but it does lack a little bit of creativity. You either have the human element or the dead element, and I believe it was season 2 or 3 they tried like a disease type thing to up the tension, but they really need to figure out new ways to make it fresh and new. And I would love to see society return a little bit. I would love to see them grow crops and build walls and be a little more defended and have the storyline progress, but it seems like we just kind of keep spinning our wheels. Ryan Cunningham, the second biggest story was Lauren Cohen's pay dispute, causing her to sign on for a pilot on a network show and an abbreviated episode count this season. But trailers lead you to believe that she's poised to take a leadership role. Can the show survive post-Rick with Lauren Cohen's Maggie Rhee as a community leader?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think she could definitely survive. I mean, I think that the show could really actually bring in a different kind of audience with her as the leader, because her and Rick, you know, while they have some similar attributes, I think that she would bring a lot more new ideas to the table. I mean, I think that you know, people are tired of, like I said, I'm personally tired of seeing Rick, you know, just go around and he does this and he does that, and you know, there's really not many consequences for his actions, in my opinion. I mean, even the things, you know, that he does, you know, take the Carl incident, you know, with his son dying, you know, none of that was really a consequence of any of his actions, which I think would have made it a lot more powerful. As far as the pay goes, I mean, if you're doing less episodes, less pay. It makes sense to me. But, you know, I think that if she becomes a big leader in the show, then, you know, it makes sense for her to get, you know, the same thing that Andrew Lincoln was getting. But I definitely think she could bring a new element to the show and hopefully kind of revitalize it, because, you know, personally, I'm getting bored of all the same old. I think I'd actually like to see them go the route of maybe there is a cure. Maybe they're trying to find something and working towards that and working towards building society back.
If they can get a vaccine that you can avoid the bites, you know,
yeah,
that would do something. Like, you're not going to cure those that were already converted. You know, it's just not going to happen. It's not going to be like that zombie movie where if you got their hearts to beat again, all of a sudden they became back and living. That was an awful movie. I don't even remember the name of it, but it was bad.
Dead Bodies.
That's it. You know, like a vaccine would help, because I can totally believe that this is a viral thing that causes people to die and then come back. But, you know, it's just, there needs to be some kind of way for humanity to survive, because they're really right now on a ticking clock. I mean, they're going to run out of time. Like, there's only so many people around, and like, they're not producing people as fast as they're getting killed.
I agree. And I know, Ryan George, your interest in the show is kind of waning, but if they put Lauren Cohen in the lead and they change it up, I mean, would that have you standing in front of your friends and family and shouting, "I believe in Maggie Rhee"?
It all comes down to what kind of story they're telling. I'm okay if it was Rick Grimes. I'm okay with if it's Maggie. I'm okay with if it's Daryl, although I'm not quite convinced that Daryl could lead the show. It really comes down to writing. If they can write stories, I'm in. If they don't make stupid decisions, which they've been doing a lot, or like kind of exponentially more over the last couple seasons, you know, I'm in. I think when the show is on and good, it's one of the best shows on TV. The problem is that it's just really inconsistent, and I think, you know, over the last few years, it's more often than not, I'm just befuddled by the choices they make. But, you know, again, they could start next season off and really, you know, if they start telling some good stories and making things compelling. They've got a great cast. They have great actors. They have great characters who've been developed well. So it's like just tell some good stories and stop, you know, and just kind of make smart choices, and I'm in. So regardless of who's leading the show, there's so many people you can choose from. You know, I don't care. I just want good stories.
Well, the D&D player in you wants King Ezekiel. I know it. The Walking Dead returns.
I was like, wait, how did I not mention Ezekiel? Yeah, I would want him to be the lead.
He rules. The Walking Dead Season 9 returns October 7th in the States and the 8th every place else. And we'll be following every show live with a breakdown from Cinik Radio right here. And IG will be tweeting every episode. and that's a lot of fun, so you should pay attention to that. But those of you who can't wait till October for your Walking Dead action, Fear the Walking Dead returns next Sunday night. Season 4, Episode 9, People Like Us. The second half of the season is set in the middle of a giant storm, and it looks like the cast is separated yet again, and they're looking for each other. IG, the end of the last season, we saw the fall of my favorite setting ever, the baseball stadium, and now they're back on the road. Do you feel that sometimes this show has developed into a big game of hide and seek?
That's a really good point, because that's basically what they do, is they've been moving the whole time, and I think that they're trying to push its way into trying to get them to head toward Virginia or Georgia and meet up with the other cast. And it just seems forced. Why can't they ever make anything work for even more than one season? The baseball stadium was an ingenious place because, you know what, if you've ever been to a baseball stadium, they all have gates, things that close, things that lock, things that are hard to get through. They have real grass and stuff inside, so you could obviously go ahead and farm at least some. Maybe you couldn't get big crops, but you could get some things going. It just was a great idea, and they just lost it so easily. And it's on the road again, and on the road again, and on the road again. They just can't and they can't stay together. It's like they all spread out in different directions. I mean, they don't have a good communication system. I don't think anybody there knows how to send up smoke signals or anything. They got to come up with some better plan. And, there's truth to the statement that there is strength in numbers. And they keep wanting to dwindle their numbers to do I don't know what. So, yeah, hide and seek kind of works because they're hiding and seeking and coming up against new bad guys, more walkers, everything else. I'm interested to see how quickly they bring them back together because if they leave them all apart for the rest of this season, that's the kind of stuff that has kept me less than interested in this show thus far. It's been a decent show, but it could be doing so much better.
Acting on a show is like a job, and they're just firing all kinds of people with seniority. During the first half, Ryan George, they killed two mainstays from the very first season, Madison and Nick. Should the rest of the cast with any kind of seniority in episode count maybe not get a little too comfortable going forward?
Like that's something with The Walking Dead, with either version of The Walking Dead, is don't get comfortable, and it's one of the more interesting things about the show is that your main characters aren't safe. Now, with that being said, I guess I don't want to spoil it in case anyone watches, but there is a show that I watch, kind of a guilty pleasure, and it's kind of been going on a kind of boring season, kind of benign, and then all of a sudden they just off a main character, and it was such a shock because you're just not used to that I do kind of miss that with some shows like The Walking Dead or like Game of Thrones, where we're so used to main characters dying. And they develop into such an ensemble that there really aren't any, there may be kind of tier 1 characters and tier 2 characters, but there aren't any clear, like, this is the lead or these are the two leads. So, in a way, because we're so used to it, there's not that shock anymore. But I kind of was reminded that when you do kill off a lead, how shocking and amazing it can be, and how much of a gut punch it can be when you're not used to it.
In the trailer, IG, high winds make walkers actually gliders. Would it be the world's worst luck to walk outside your house and get bit during a flyby?
Now we have flying squirrel walkers, so I think that's absolutely hilarious. So what the hell are they thinking? I mean, I understand that they're decomposing, and so they're probably losing weight, like they're brand new methamphetamine crack addicts. And so, yeah, I guess some things are going to happen, but come on. Flying walkers, drive-by, fly-by walkers, absolutely. And, yeah, that would be the worst luck ever. You walk outside, you're putting your keys in your pocket, you can go into work, and just all of a sudden teeth to the neck. That would be pretty bad luck.
Strong, likable characters like Morgan and John Dory and Athea. IG, is it possible that there may be one or two characters away from surpassing the original show in popularity and maybe even ratings? That's
the thing, is some of the acting on this show and some of the actors themselves, their charisma is so high. And they brought Lenny James over, who, you and I both agree, you can't get any nicer than this guy. And, I mean, he portrays that on the screen, too, where he just has this magnetism, draws you to him. So, yeah, I mean, if they keep heading in the direction they're going, they could easily surpass. I mean, but it's the thing where they have to keep their ensemble strong, and they have to get them back together. I don't want to watch Lenny James on one side and the next guy on the other side, and I want them together. The interactions together are where the strength in most of these shows are, because you can't build anything on solo interaction, when they're meeting new people that aren't going to be around for long or are going to die 2 more episodes later and just fighting walkers. It just does not build for a good show. So that's why I fear them all being separated, is you don't get the strength in writing when that happens.
Well, Kirkman had a bit of loose lip syndrome during San Diego Comic-Con. He not only let slip that Lincoln was leaving, but he also might have let slip that they possibly could be working on another Walking Dead pilot. Ryan, if we have a 3rd show, could it get to the point where there might be a little bit of walker saturation?
Yeah, the problem with this is, not to go back, I'm going to do it anyway, going back to Game of Thrones, the reason why having multiple versions of that may work is because you have so many different time periods and lifestyles and worlds that, within that story and kind of continuity that can work, and you can tell completely unique stories depending on what part of the world you're in and depending on what timeline you're in. I think the issue here is, I don't know how much more varied of a story you can tell, unless you have some super compelling and interesting characters and you just want to focus on those characters. But then why not just take those characters and put them in a completely different setting? Like, why do we need them in the Walking Dead setting? So, I think that's the issue, is like, what new are you going to give me in this world that's going to make me want to tune in? I just don't get it. And if you do have compelling characters that you want to have fighting zombies, just insert them into The Walking Dead or Fear the Walking Dead. We're always losing characters. We're always in need of new characters. So just do it that way. So I don't want to see a new show until they, fix their flagship show. So yeah, that's my, my thoughts on it.
Kind of do a romantic comedy series, where basically, I'm in love with a Fear the Walking Dead walker, or, something like that, That'd be completely different, and you could watch that week in and week out and just have, no, honey, don't bite me this week.
They already made Dead Bodies, and you hated it.
I did. Maybe they can do it right over here,
I only want a 3rd show if we see it from the point of view of a walker. That's what I want. I want the whole show just to be wandering around and biting people. Nothing would make me happier than seeing that. I don't think they need a 3rd show. I don't want a 3rd show unless they're going to wrap up the original. Maybe if you set it outside the country or figure out a different way to tell the story. We've already done Walking Dead California. We've done Walking Dead Mexico. We've done Walking Dead Atlanta. It's enough already. We don't need another show unless they come at it from a completely different angle, and I'm not sure if they're creative enough to do that. San Diego Comic-Con left us with a lot of great trailers and a lot of things to mull over, but one of the first things that we got to talk about is Venom. When Eddie Brock acquires the powers of a symbiote costume, he releases his alter ego Venom. Starring Tom Hardy, Michelle Williams, and Riz Ahmed, Sony is going it alone without Marvel's help this time, like they didn't do with Spider-Man Homecoming. Ryan Cunningham, good idea or bad idea?
Oh, bad idea completely. Yeah, I think they're going to screw it up 100%. I love Venom. He's one of my favorite bad guys. Spider-Man, he's my all-time favorite superhero. There's question about if he's going to appear in this movie or not. I guess it all kind of depends on the time frame, if it's before, if it's after Infinity Wars, but if Marvel's not putting, anything into it, I would say he's probably not. But, there's rumors that he'd be on set. But I don't think they're going to be able to pull it off. I mean, I've tried so hard to get excited about these trailers, but I'm watching them, and I have to watch it 3 or 4 times before I can even tell what Venom is saying. I think they're going to have to, close caption the entire movie. It's almost like he's speaking in another language. I mean, maybe I'm just, have bad hearing, but I don't think they're going to be able to pull it off. I think it's going to do really well the first week, and then I think it's just going to bomb.
I'm torn because I like Venom as a character. I hated what they did with him in Spider-Man 3, but overall I like him as a comic book character. I like him as a Marvel entity. I want this movie to succeed because of that, but at the same time, I want it to fail because the second they make any kind of real money, they're going to rip Spider-Man back away from Marvel. And I think that's a huge mistake because it'll take them out of the MCU and them using them anymore for any of these big group storylines. Do you want to see a Sony Spider-Man movie, or would you prefer that they kept them in Marvel?
Oh, no, absolutely keep them in Marvel. Clearly, Sony hasn't really gotten that character. I mean, Sony hasn't gotten it right since the Spider-Man 2, really. Last couple before Marvel took over were, okay, mediocre to okay, but not near the level of those first two. So I definitely want to see him in the MCU. I love Tom Holland. I love what they've been able to kind of produce with the character. I think that they've gotten that character really right, and I don't want to see Sony risk messing it up, even if Venom does well. I'd rather find a way to shoehorn this version of Venom into the MCU than to kind of pull him away from what they've really got going right now.
We talk about this all the time, where they pick these guys who have name recognition, who have plenty of job offers, and they'll take the role because, hey, who doesn't want to be Venom? But they won't commit to it to the long term. And then next thing you know, Tom Hardy's like, oh, I got to do another season of Taboo, so I'm done doing this. Would you rather seen them pick an unknown, especially since Tom Hardy's going to be in the Venom costume probably 75% of the time?
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, a lot of these Marvel movies, the people that they got put in them at the time didn't have a million things going on. So getting them to sign on for long contracts so that you could push them as far as you wanted to, either they were unknown when they picked up the spot or they just were willing to sign a long-term deal. And I don't know that they've got that with this. And the other side, Cunningham here was saying that, you could hardly understand him, and that's the Bane problem. And some of that's, just how Tom Hardy talks. Sometimes even in Taboo, it's hard to understand what he's saying. There's a multitude of problems, and the biggest one is not involving Marvel. Marvel has the formula. They can make things work. And they didn't necessarily have to bring Iron Man and other characters in. But let them come in and help you craft a good product. Give them 5% of the take and let them help you craft something good. And you're right. I mean, they're going to lose Tom Hardy because he's got too many irons in the fire. And he's somebody that isn't – I think he's more artistic than a lot of the other people, because he'll do lower budget work because he wants to do the work, because it's stuff that interests him. So, yeah, I don't think he's long for the world. I don't think they're going to get 5 or 6 Venom movies out of him.
I may disagree with that a little bit, only because you're hearing Tom Hardy talk about the role. I think he's really into it. I think he really loved the script. He loves the character. I think there's a personal connection, I believe, with the son or something. But, I think that, and I would have to think that Sony's locked him up to some kind of a deal that, that if they need him, they can, get him on board. And obviously he's not going to, he's fine with that paycheck. So I do think that if this is a big success, I think we'll see Tom Hardy on board again. Just like I said, some stuff I've heard in the press and, hearing how his involvement in it, I don't think it's kind of like, it's not one of those things where like they called him, he got a script, he goes in, he plays the character and leaves. I think he's involved really has been involved in the creative process. Even hearing stuff about kind of how they dealt with the voice when he was acting, like I think he's really in on this. So I would expect that, I'm confident that if this does well, we'll see him again as Venom.
First off, I have no idea what accent he's trying to do. And second off, yeah, you'll get a sequel. But then again, Ben Affleck was overjoyed to be Batman when they first cast him as well, until the movie didn't do so well. Much like a dad that has no interest in being a dad, he went out for cigarettes and he's never coming back. Ryan, George, part of what makes the MCU go is the New York City setting. Venom is set in San Francisco for whatever reason. Why make that change, and do you think it'll work?
Part maybe continuity with with the MCU. So they've talked a lot about how this isn't part of the MCU, but Venom is a Spider-Man character, and no matter how much you want to kind of decouple him from Spider-Man for this movie, we're all going to be thinking Spider-Man. So by putting him in that setting, you kind of put across the country and distance him completely from Spider-Man. So even if we, so for the people like us who are maybe a little bit more into reading, the gossip columns and reading about what, where this falls into everything, we know that it's not part of the MCU, so it doesn't matter. But then for the kind of layperson, for the casual fan who doesn't know any difference, they think it's all one studio doing all this. They accept that, oh, well, Spider-Man's not it because Spider-Man's in New York and, he's in San Francisco. So I think it's kind of a practical move to keep everybody happy and limit the amount of kind of questions and craziness that we're going to get from it.
Well, as creative as Sam Raimi is as a director, the one thing that failed him in Spider-Man 3, despite the storyline, was the CGI. They just couldn't get Venom's look right. I know you hate the voice, Ryan Cunningham, but what did you think of the CGI?
Oh, no, I think the CGI looks awesome. I think that's one thing that, yeah, they are hitting out of the park for this movie. Is he looks great. I mean, he looks scary. He looks like Venom from the comics. But at the same time, it worries me because, Sony has a special talent of taking great actors, great characters, and just making them silly. I mean, they turned, Jamie Foxx into Electro the musical in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. So I really love the look. I mean, I think he looks awesome, but that's what we've seen from, 6 minutes of trailers. So are they going to be able to keep it up? I think the only thing, from my opinion, from what I've seen so far, that they could do a little bit better is his tentacles. I think maybe they could make the tentacles look a little cooler. To me, right now, they just kind of look like silly putty, the little green slime goo stuff. So I think they could do that a little bit better, but as far as his head, his face, his tongue, all that goes, that looks awesome. Surprisingly,
we get a 6-month break from Marvel movies. Ryan George, Infinity Wars have put the whole schedule on hold until March 8th when Captain Marvel comes out. Do you think it's time that DC sneaks in with a few movies and maybe makes up a little space in this race? Because they're clearly falling behind.
They can't do it like production schedule-wise. I think what they did, which was smart, was with the couple trailers that they did put out, they generated some excitement. With the announcements with the Joker movie, despite my kind of better judgment, I'm a little excited to hear because it just sounds so strange. I think that they can start to build some buzz by making decisions and announcing things that really show that they're maybe, trying to head in a different direction, which I think they are. Like, between their app and between kind of these kind of one-off movies and some stories of the Batman movie, being kind of its own standalone thing. I think they're trying to, maybe get away from this whole extended universe, which they really aren't going to catch Marvel with, and trying to do their own thing. So I think, in this time period, DC can do a lot to maybe increase their, I guess our trust in them. And, if Aquaman comes out and is good and Shazam is good, I think that will go a long way towards us maybe rebuilding that confidence that DC maybe knows what they're doing or has some idea of how to produce some good movies and get us excited.
Yeah, well, we're getting Aquaman on December 21st. And basically, Arthur Curry learns that he's the heir of the underworld kingdom of Atlantis and must step forward to lead his people and be a hero to the world. It's starring Jason Momoa, Nicole Kidman, and Michelle Williams. IG, we talked about this on the phone, and I'm going to ask all three of you this, but can the Aquaman movie get past the stigma attached to the character?
Yeah, and that's the problem, and that's the biggest problem in DC is they have one, really super powerful superhero in Superman, and they have some other ones that should be super powerful, but somehow are trumped by very easy things, like Green Lantern being trumped by the color yellow, and Wonder Woman being trumped by shackles put on by a man. I mean, there's been stupid things that the only thing that can do Superman is kryptonite, and there's a finite amount of that. Aquaman has been kind of made fun of everywhere. I mean, from Entourage to Family Guy. I mean, nobody as a kid when you played Super Friends wanted to be Aquaman. Nobody's like, I'm going to swim around and talk to fish. Let's do this, What they're doing, though, is they're building an interesting character on the back of Jason Momoa, which is working. And that's what I'm hoping is that they don't push so hard on it that it breaks that charisma that he's got. Because it can be interesting. I think they can overcome it. But I think if they push too hard on it, if they make it too cheesy, if they show those circles coming out of his head toward the fish or something like they used to do in the old cartoon, we're going to have some real issues with this. So I'm optimistic. The trailers so far look pretty interesting. They look pretty good. I like the snarkiness of Arthur Curry. I think it could be a lot of fun, but it's still Aquaman, so I'm still kind of wondering where this is going to go.
Well, Ryan George, we see quite a bit of sense of humor in the trailer. Is it safe to say that we're past the Zack Snyder DC taking ourselves too seriously universe?
Yeah, I think so, and I think they did a lot with that character even in Justice League, not taking himself too seriously. So I think we're slowly past that, but I'll take it a movie by movie basis before I'm sure that that's where DC is going to go. But at the end of the day, I was never, that doesn't bother me all that much. It's again, they just didn't. Just boring, it's give me, Dark Knight is pretty dour, but it's so good. I mean, it's still the best comic book movie I think ever made, and maybe I don't know that anything will ever be made as good as that. So it's not, it's really again, you're going to tell a good story. It's going to be interesting, and they were just most of the DC movies so far have just been boring, but I'm gonna reserve. I'm not excited about this movie yet. I think, I like Jason Momoa, but I think that he's done a good job of erasing that stigma that goes along with Aquaman. Like, no part of me is like thinking of Aquaman as a joke. I think, he made him a fun, kind of cool, interesting character. This movie's not selling me at this point. I'm just not quite sold. I'll see it opening weekend, and I hope it does well, because I am a DC fan, but I'm not in. I'm not sold on the CGI. I'm not quite sold on it yet, but I do think, to answer that earlier question, no part of me is like, oh, Aquaman's a joke, this is ridiculous, why are we doing it? And I think he's done a good job of erasing that stigma.
I think the movie will do well, and it's positioned right in the middle of the holiday season. Ryan Cunningham, do you think the lack of Marvel competition and the placement on the calendar, the movie could possibly be successful?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think it could be successful, especially since there's no Marvel movies coming out. I mean, comic fans, for the most part, are comic fans. Me, I mean, I'm more of a diehard Marvel fan than a DC fan. As a kid, I was really into all the animated series and things like that. But as they started making the movies, they got me disinterested. So they turned someone who was a fan to someone who wasn't as much of a fan. But I think with the lack of competition, people are going to get their fill. I think that there's enough, basically fanboys who are wet for Jason Momoa that they're gonna want to watch him, regardless of what he's in. He could be, instead of Aquaman, he could be in the Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy movie, and I think people would tune in.
After seeing the CGI-filled trailer, it was a lot of fun. It was interesting. I'll be there opening night. How about you, IG?
Oh yeah, I'll see it opening weekend. I'm interested. Jason Momoa carries a good amount of charisma around with him, and I think he was one of the saving points of the Justice League movie. Him and the Flash character, just because he was just kind of awkward and odd, they just kind of worked pretty well, and I thought it was a lot of fun. I thought it was a good time, except for Superman. Like, Superman in that movie was pretty awful, and Superman so far, since Christopher Reeve, there hasn't been a good Superman movie. And the last ones that Christopher Reeve did even were pretty bad. They've lost their way, except for the Dark Knight series. And, I'm hoping that they find some kind of trigger that puts them back on path. Because, they've got good characters. They just need to learn to write them properly without everything having to be dark and brooding.
Well, the biggest way to fix Justice League was you should have left Superman dead. And I don't think Superman should be a part of group movies anymore. He upsets the balance of power. There's really only one way to beat him. It's not interesting. And I really think the reason why Marvel's so far ahead of DC in every category is the lack of a Superman in the Marvel Universe. If you watch Justice League, he beat the whole team up by himself. What do you need everybody else for? It takes their importance out of the equation. And, all right, so he's offset by a rock that, how many ways can you introduce that? I find Superman uninteresting, and I think he just puts a monkey wrench into every storyline. So I think they really should have left him dead and maybe just had him do individual one-off movies. On April 5th, we're getting Shazam. A boy's given the ability to become an adult superhero in times of need with a single magical word. Starring Zachary Levi, Michelle Broth, Mark Strong, and friend of our show, Cooper Andrews. That's Jerry from The Walking Dead. Ryan Cunningham, how much did you know about Shazam pre-trailer?
Oh, I knew a fair bit about Shazam, not really from comics, but more from the video games. Injustice or Mortal Kombat versus DC Universe, things like that. But I've got to say, I'm excited for it. I mean, I love Zachary. I mean, he was in Chuck, which is one of my all-time favorite shows, and I think the trailer looks great. That's one of the things that that's a movie I'll see opening night. Aquaman, probably not. Shazam, I think I'll definitely be there opening night.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty good show, too. And the thing is, the trailer came out, and honestly, the trailer looks amazing. It just looks like so much fun, and it looks almost different from anything that they've been doing in the DC universe. And that's where I'm excited, is they're taking a wholly different approach to a superhero. It almost reminds me of the old 80s show, The Greatest American Hero, where the guy got the super suit and didn't know how to use it because he lost the instruction manual. It seems like that. It's like, what are your superpowers? I don't know. It's like, let's go test. Can you fly? Nope. Falls on his back. It just looks fun, and I do remember, like, Saturday morning cartoons. There was a Shazam cartoon when I was young, so I knew a lot about Shazam, and it can be pretty interesting. It can be a lot of fun. And again, he's got susceptibilities that are kind of stupid, just like every other DC character. It's like, hey, color yellow, or somebody else saying Shazam might depower you. It seems a little unthought. It's lacking of thought with some of it, but I think that they're heading in the right direction, and I think the actual light up costume works a little bit too. There's a lot of fun to be had. This is one character that is, it's silly, but it works because he's a kid, and I think that's one thing that's going to help them out a lot, is that he is a kid, even though he transforms into a man, at heart he's still a kid, and I think that's one thing that Zachary Levi does well, and I think that is one thing that's really going to help this movie, because you look at the trailer, it's bright colors, it's fun, it's cool, and I'm really interested to see it.
Well, how much more fun would Big have been if Tom Hanks had superpowers, right? I didn't know anything about it, and not to sound like a shill for Marvel, but the fact that we've already gotten to a character that I've never heard of and that isn't a household name, is it showing lack of depth in the DC universe?
I think that possibly. I mean, if they can do it well, they can do it well. That's the real question that comes from this, is are they going to be able to make, someone who's not a household name the way that Marvel has done, for a huge portion of their, you got Falcon, Black Panther, people that you wouldn't have normally known. Marvel has made them a household name. I think with this movie, they could do that. And we were talking before about, turning something around. This could be what turns it around for them. I can certainly hope so anyway. I mean, I don't think there's as little name recognition, Cinik, as you think there is with Shazam. He's been around quite a bit recently, just like Ryan Cunningham was saying in the Injustice series. He's been there. He's been around some. So I think he is among DC's higher-end people. He's probably a B comic. He's not really A-list. But on the other side, I think they're still trying to stay away from Green Lantern after that whole debacle. So they're waiting so they can build something right, because the last one was awful.
Shazam's arch nemesis is Black Adam, which is supposed to be played by Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Ryan, George, is it a mistake not going to him in the first movie, or should they wait to see how the movie develops?
I think they run the risk if they go to him early and they lean on him. He is, probably the biggest star we have right now. And so it would take away from I think it takes away from the character of Shazam if you kind of lean on him being in it and being a main character. So I think it makes sense. Again, if you make a good movie, people will come out to see it. DC, Marvel, people like superhero movies, and it just takes that little bit. You just got to start building buzz, and you just have to, you do have to kind of, those trailers have to be good, and it has to get good buzz, and the rating reviews have to be good, and if that's the case, it will do well, and it'll command a sequel, and then we have, then we can bring in The Rock, where I think that would be the strength that is really bringing him in once you've kind of established your character. But I do think you just run the risk of The Rock overshadowing it, and then us, and the fans and people going to see a movie, starring The Rock rather than going to see, Shazam.
IG, did the trailer make you want to go out and see the movie opening week?
Oh, definitely. It looked like just pure fun with superheroes. And that's something that DC has been away from for way too long. It's like everything needed to be dark, and it needed to be gory and just feel gritty. And, that's what Marvel doesn't do. Marvel is usually full of color and humor and everything else going on. And DC just needs to not copy that, but get closer to that end. I don't think they need to go fully away from having the drama side that they've had, but it's been too heavy on that. You don't have the moments where you're sitting there where you're jumping out of your seat, getting excited for the things that are going on, because it's a downward turn through most of the movie, and then finally it comes up. And you got to have minor wins in the story, and that's what this looks like, is that the kid's going to be winning, learning how to be Shazam, and it looks like it's lighthearted, and like Ryan Cunningham said, that it's a kid inside there, so it may look like a man, but it's a 13-year-old in there with. That's how a 13-year-old thinks, so it's going to be a lot of fun.
On January 18th, we get the sequel to M. Night Shyamalan's Unbreakable and Split. Following the conclusion of Split, Glass finds David Dunn pursuing Crumb's superhero figure, the Beast, in a series of escalating encounters, starring Bruce Willis, Sam Jackson, and James McAvoy. M. Night is on a hot streak, Ryan George. Is this his return to relevance?
Yes, I guess I'd argue Split was his return to relevance. He is on a bit of a hot streak. I think the movie The Visit, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was good. I thought it was a really good movie. I thought Split was really good. I think Split I think I liked it. I think the twist was great, and I think that's really what sold us was the twist. I think McAvoy was awesome in it, but I think maybe maybe it's not as good as a movie as the twist and the excitement about kind of pulling this universe together. So I'm excited about Glass. I think, although I think it's a toss-up, I think we could get a great movie or we could get a mess. And I think I was excited by the first trailer. I think it looks, it looks interesting. It looks like something I want to see. And so in that way, it didn't turn me off. I didn't, I'm not worried yet about it. So, but I'm going to go in there kind of with moderate expectations and hope that, it exceeds my moderate expectations rather than going in there with high hopes and getting a crap movie.
Unbreakable to me kind of reminded me a lot of the show Heroes. It was almost like somebody that wasn't a superhero fan making a superhero movie, and he didn't quite grasp the key moments of the movie. I liked Split, but it was a bit of a mess. I liked it more when I found out that it was kind of a sequel to Unbreakable. So I went back and watched it again, and that kind of made it a little more enjoyable for me. In the preview, Ryan Cunningham, part of the trailer was they were all in a mental ward, and a doctor believed that they were all crazy. Is that a realistic take on how society would view somebody that claimed to have superpowers?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I think it's a really interesting point to make because, in our society today, it's not even people who claim, to be superheroes. It could be someone who claims to be, depressed or bipolar or whatever it might be, and, they just get kind of thrown off, So I think that is a very good real-world way to look at it. And, what I find even more interesting is, we have these cinematic universes now where people know that superheroes exist, and I believe they did this, in Jessica Jones as well, where they had a guy who, and I might be confusing all my Marvel stuff here, but there was a guy who, said he was super fast, but he could only do it when people weren't looking at him or something like that, and he was thrown off as being crazy, only for it to be revealed that he actually did have some powers. So I think it's really interesting, that these people can be discredited, in all these different cinematic worlds where these things have been documented, these things have been seen. So I think it is a really interesting take, and I definitely think that's what would happen in the real world.
It was still interesting that he had super speed but was able to get something dumped on him and still die and not get out of the way of it. The trailer has David Dunn, played by Bruce Willis, at odds with Kevin Wendell Crumb's character, which he was the villain from Split. Now, Ryan, where do you think Mr. Glass will fall on this? I mean, whose side do you think he'll end up being on? Well,
he's the villain, so I would expect him to fall on the side of McAvoy's character, but it's called Glass, so who knows? I'm interested. I don't know what to think, and I like that. Like, I don't know where they're going to go, where he's going to go with the story, where he wants to go. And I think even the setting itself is really interesting. So, I hope it's not, I really hope it's not something as simple as him taking, one person's side or another. And I really hope that they really take it somewhere that just is unexpected. Yeah. So, I haven't really given that much thought.
And let's jump over to some movie news. James Gunn was fired for offensive tweets, some of them being as far as 10 years old. The cast has come to his defense, but Disney is unlikely to rehire him for Guardians of the Galaxy 3. IG, should Disney reconsider?
Disney has let some other people back in that had a pretty poor past. I mean, think about some of the things Robert Downey Jr. did previously, and they're still holding on to him as tight as it can be. Obviously, Guardians of the Galaxies, both Volume 1 and Volume 2, have done amazingly well at the box office, and no small part of that has got to be due to James Gunn and his writing style and his directing style. I don't know how Volume 3 can be without him, but I think if it does not do well, they'll be begging him to come back. And at that point, you kind of write your own check, don't you? I don't know. I think as a society, we're getting too focused on what people did so many years ago. And now, while your past is important, it is your past. And I don't think there's a person among us that can honestly say they didn't do something stupid 10 plus years ago. And people are really looking at the wrong things, I think, because it's like, well, what has he actually done? Yeah, I saw the tweets. Were they distasteful? Were they in poor choice? Yeah, they were. But if you look at James Gunn's explanation of what was going on, it makes a little bit of sense. I'm not saying that it's a good thing that he said them, but I understand what was happening, and I don't believe that those were things that he was actually doing. He was just being controversial, which a lot of people were doing, especially 10 years ago on Twitter. People would be controversial just to get retweets, just to get likes, just so they could up their profile. And it's kind of a poor world where people need that social media following in order to be able to get work. And we heard it last week from Marilyn Gigliotti that if your profile isn't big enough, you're just not going to get hired.
Yeah, it's not even a matter of talent anymore. It's a matter of how many people are following you. And it's been the same way for us with the show. We get actors or actresses based off of our numbers and not off the fact that we could make them sound good or bring their content to different people. Ryan Cunningham, do you think Disney should reconsider? I mean, their base is children. They sell products to children. They pander to children. And this guy made some highly offensive, questionable tweets about pedophilia and molestation and rape. If you're the head of Disney, do you let him back?
Yeah, I would personally. This is a subject that's kind of close to heart for me. Being a stand-up, comic, what I do, I've made a joke about every single thing that he's said. I'm in a small business, and I'm in a small business that caters to children, but there's such thing as time and place. Has Star-Lord ever made a rape joke? Not that I caught. So, I think that as long as he is actually catering, the movies to the kids like he's supposed to, as long as he's acting appropriately, in front of children, then I don't see any reason why he should really be, especially because it was so long ago, why he should be in trouble for the things that he said. Again, like I said, I make, those kind of jokes, on a daily basis. A lot of it, and this is one thing that people don't understand, and, I don't know James Gunn's intentions, when he tweeted those things out, but the reason I make certain kind of jokes is to bring attention to subjects. If I do a school shooting joke, it's not because, I think dead kids are hilarious. No, it's to bring issues, some issues to light. And, we all have our different ways of coping. And, also, we just have different ways that we bring issues to the attention of the people. For some people, that's Twitter. For some people, that's jokes. But I don't think that anybody should ever be, I guess, really fired for something that, they've said, especially when it's not in relation to what they're currently doing. If he said something, pertaining to Guardians of the Galaxy, currently in relation to kids, then yes, absolutely fire him. But that's not the case. These are things that he said, 10 years ago.
Well, you can't undo the past. I mean, Guardians was, 3 or 4 years ago, Guardians 1. You go back, they should have done their due diligence on him and checked out who he was, because this is who the guy is. In essence, he has a dark sense of humor. It's odd, but all those weird qualities are also good qualities that made the movie great. I mean, in the first one, Star-Lord made a ejaculation joke about the inside of his ship, about it looking like a Jackson Pollock painting. It was hilarious, and it's because of James Gunn's sense of humor. You can't undo the past. You've already had this guy make 2 huge movies. Your name's already associated with him. He should have issued an apology, and that should have been it at the end of the day. Twitter's the devil. Everybody needs to stay off there, because you're not going to get context. You're just not. And you're not going to get that person's sense of humor. We need to go back to a time where not everything that came to our mind needed to be printed and put out for everybody to see. Ryan George, Chris Hardwick is reinstated by AMC as the host of Talking Dead after investigation clears him by the network of any wrongdoing. Has his reputation been damaged forever?
Yeah, it's tough to say. I guess time will tell. I think, I'm glad, I think AMC did the right thing by, they not outright cutting him like, Disney did with James Gunn. Although I guess it was out there what James Gunn did. But, I think it was good to kind of suspend him, do an investigation, see what else comes out, and then make a decision. I think they made the right decision. It would appear that I don't think anyone else has come out against him. You've had people on Twitter say, "Oh, he's an asshole. I don't like him," or something. Some ex-employees, but then equally, ex-girlfriends have all come out and said that's not this person I dated. So I think from that perspective, it was a he said she said situation. But then you have other people who've been in relationships with him that also come out and say, "Well, he wasn't like that with me." I think there's not enough evidence to convict him in whatever court you've got him in, and so I think AMC did the right thing. I think it remains to be seen with the Me Too movement. I'm a supporter of it, but I do think that there will be kind of casualties, and I do think that we need to take every situation individually and look at it and look at the evidence before convicting anybody. We do need to take. We do need to investigate things, and we don't want people's names to be muddied just because they're brought up. There will be unfortunate situations, but I would hope that his reputation isn't kind of destroyed because of this. And at the same time, if other things come out and he really is a horrible guy, I hope it comes out. But otherwise, unless nothing else comes out, I hope that he can resume his career. He seems like a good guy. He's done well for The Walking Dead and for himself. And I just hope he's able to kind of get back to normal.
IG, is it right that any woman that you've ever encountered in your life can completely derail your career with just an accusation?
No, it's not right at all. And that's the thing is, can you not have just a bad relationship? Can you not just have one that didn't work without them having the ability, should you become famous later or more famous than you currently are, that they can literally just go and destroy whatever you built by saying you were mean to me? Come on. And they held on to this for so long, especially with all the people coming out and saying, no, he's not that bad. He didn't treat me that way. Really, it can't be that simple. Me Too is important, but most of the Me Too movement wasn't necessarily with somebody they were in a relationship with. It was somebody that was in power some way over them, right? It was like Harvey Weinstein. Are you going to get jobs because you went into his office and did what you had to do to get the next job? Or, girls going to work and if they want to get the promotion, having to do something with their boss that they didn't want to do. That's more what this should be about. And instead people are trying to turn it into, I had a bad relationship with you. It didn't work out in the end. So now I'm going to destroy you both professionally and financially. It's a pretty poor method to go by. And I think the world needs to start changing their opinions on what we're judging in these types of movements, because it's really just so detrimental, especially in cases like this where it turns out to, for the most part, to not be true. Did they have a bad relationship? Sure, but haven't we all at some point had a relationship that wasn't great?
Yeah, I believe we have. And it's huge to think that just one wrong word, one action, one could just get you in the crosshairs. And there's so many angry people. There's so many little people in the world that just want to jump on the bandwagon and burn everybody and everything. And I really think that rather than rush to judgment, we need to hear all the facts involved. Maybe he was a terrible boyfriend. That has nothing to do with him being the host of a show or him leading panels at Comic-Con. If that's the case, then don't date him. But I believe he's already married. And I don't want to see the whole Me Too thing get shanghaied and it become, rather than making the wrongs right, it just a sounding board for people that are jaded or looking to get a payday. Or it started out as a quest for good, and I think it should stay that way. And I don't think people should be losing their jobs until all the facts are in.
Kind of heartened by, if you look at this situation, you look at the Aziz Ansari situation, again, who knows, there's still going to be, their name will always kind of be attached to this, and that's unfortunate. But at least there are situations where it does appear that, people didn't, yes, maybe a rush to judgment and the names are all over, but at least, it has come out, I think most people kind of look at the Aziz Ansari situation as well as like, well, look, it looks like it was, a shitty date, but it wasn't sexual assault. Just as we're kind of looking at the Hardwick thing and we're kind of saying, okay, well, maybe there was a bad relationship, but this doesn't look like, this meets the kind of criteria for what we want to kind of be involved in this. So, it does seem like, this is so new that we're kind of drawing the lines here and figuring out what the, where are those lines, and where are we going to kind of punish people and kind of convict them in that court of public opinion? And at least it looks like we're starting to figure out what works, because otherwise, in the worst case scenario, it would be a situation where we kind of vilify both of them and they would never get work again. And, at least for now, it looks like, Ansari is going to get another season of Master of None. Hardwick's kind of been instated. So maybe we are kind of seeing this kind of settle, and we're kind of, again, starting to figure out like who gets punished and who doesn't get punished for what, happens.
IG, we talked about this before, but I'm going to bring it up again because news has come up. It's October, and we should be gearing up for a new season of Stranger Things. Well, not so fast. Unfortunately, Stranger Things won't be back until next year. The Duffy brothers wanted to bring Season 3. They wanted it to be bigger and more CGI-full, with a fuller story. Is this a mistake? Do you agree or disagree?
Oh, I think it's a mistake. I think it's a mistake that HBO's waiting so long to bring back Game of Thrones, too. And you know what? I'm going to be sitting there when it premieres, watching it just like everybody else. And so I guess the reason I think it's a mistake is because I want it now. I've loved the first 2 seasons of Stranger Things. I can't wait for the third one because they've all been great. Part of what I think pushed it back isn't just the Duffy brothers wanting to add more stuff to it and pushing things, but you see Millie Bobby Brown is going to be in the new Godzilla movie, and that looks good too. I mean, we saw the trailer from that from San Diego Comic-Con. Godzilla King of the Monsters looks like it's going to be an amazing film. Looks a lot of fun. Mothra and a bunch of other characters are going to be in it, a bunch of other old Godzilla monsters. So obviously she wanted to go do some other things too, which takes away from her time to give to Stranger Things. But, it goes the same way. Like, we're in this I want it now mentality, and I'm in it right along with everybody else. So, yeah, I want Stranger Things in October just like every other year because it's kind of a Halloween-themed thing. But, if it has to allow these actors to stretch their wings a little bit and let them go do a couple other things, then I'm okay with waiting till spring or something for it. And they gave us a little bit of a teaser trailer. So I'm still holding on to my excitement. I can't wait for it, honestly.
Yeah, I was excited for it because it usually came around Halloween, and that became a thing. It's turning fall out, and you're going to get some Stranger Things, and I absolutely love the show. I mean, if they're going to make it better, if the season's just going to blow my wig off, then I'll absolutely wait for it. But if it's the same exact thing as we got in Season 1 and Season 2, did we need another 6 months? And I don't know if we can blame the kid's schedule. I mean, Millie Bobby Brown is a really important actress right now as far as, and so is Macy Williams. I don't think that delayed Game of Thrones either. I don't know. I can't wait for Season 3, and I hope that they absolutely tear it up. And that's about all we have, all the time we have this week. I want to thank our guest, Ryan Cunningham, of course, IG and Ryan for stopping by, and thanks for listening.
And that's it for this episode of the Cinik Radio Podcast. I'm Igrihe. We had a great time bringing you this week's show. Please send all your comments, questions, concerns, and any crazy news stories from your neck of the woods to CINIKRADIO@gmail.com. Find us on the internet at CINIKRADIO.com. Look for us on Facebook at Facebook.com/CINIKRADIO. And find us on Twitter at Cinik Radio. Continue to like, listen, subscribe, and share this with all your friends and family. And until next time, don't get captured.
Follow the podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and at CINIKRADIO.com. Available for download on iTunes.